It's been so long. It's been so many weeks. And
Like
now
all
here
the
we
weeks.
are. We have finally done it. We have returned to the book club. Who is hype? I am hype. I hope you can hear it in my monotonous
Hi,
tone.
I'm Dad.
Fucking same.
I'm not particularly excited about this week's chapter.
Yeah, it's okay. It's alright. It's pretty small, I think, is the big thing that,
No, it's
I
just not
only
a big
have
thing,
like, I have a pretty short list of notes, but I thought it was kind of interesting, and I kind of related to it myself a little bit, so it's like, interesting. So, shall we jump right in? Has anyone has anything they want to share before we get started?
No.
Got him!
No.
Alright, well, let's begin. So, this week we're reading Chapter 7, The Road to Extraordinary. In it, Laszlo and Clara...
Let's make an announcement to the other guys with the stream
Oh,
link
yeah,
so
no, that's a good idea.
so that they can watch and see what's going on.
Yeah. Strong plan. Channel, copy, paste. Book club is live.
Just
Come
ping
check it out.
I will ping the new ones. Well,
I'll just everyone.
Oh yeah.
I don't give a fuck.
No fudges were given on that day.
Too easy. So, so this week's chapter, we talk about Laszlo and Clara, two relatively insane people who decided to do something insane, and it worked out insanely well. In the 1960s, they decided to raise chess geniuses. Laszlo, in particular, was a kind of crazy guy, and he had done... Does anyone remember what he worked in? He worked in... It wasn't computer science or something, but it was like, he works in some kind of a technical field. And he was like, you know what? I'm gonna make some geniuses. You know what the world likes? We're like geniuses. I'm gonna get that bitch a genius, right? And so he
Bitches like geniuses.
Bitches like geniuses, precisely. So he meets Clara and he's like, hey, we should raise geniuses together. And she, by some miracle of God, says, yeah, that sounds reasonable. I will participate. Yeah, which is pretty amazing. They produced 3 daughters, all of which went on to be astoundingly successful, world-class chess players. So, he uses this as the authors use this as a case study to kind of examine, what does it take to produce not just somebody who's good at something, but somebody who's, the best in the world at something, right? And they've kind of identified 4 different stages of mastery, say. And so that in the 1980s, Benjamin Bloom did a study on 120 experts in various different fields, and they looked for commonalities in early childhood development that could try to explain what is it that happens in the life of a genius that makes them the way that they are. So they start at the beginning. The first kind of stage of the geniushood is to simply be introduced to the field of interest in a kind of a playful way, right? It's not intended to be super structured. It's not intended to be super hardcore. It's just, somebody needs to get interested in something, right? And usually the way that they do that is they play with it in some sort of a way, right? They talk about the chess geniuses. They found the chessboard in the closet and just kind of liked the shape of the pieces. They talked about the hockey player who, would like bat a tennis ball around in the basement with like wooden spoons or something crazy, like Tiger Woods had like a tiny baby-sized golf club that he would like mess around with as a kid,
Yep.
So the objects involved in the field of interest play a large role in kids' very, very early development. They become familiar with them and interested in them, and they kind of like messing around with them. At that same time, parents provide a lot of time, attention, and encouragement to the kid, kind of making sure that they follow up on their interest in the thing and in the activity. Parents teach values like self-discipline, hard work, responsibility, spending time constructively. They praise and acknowledge effort and achievement, which kind of kicks in that whole dopamine thing going, right? And at some point, they start to do play that looks a little bit more similar to practice, right? With some kind of a challenge or goal involved, right? This is the equivalent of like playing catch in the backyard for like a baseball player, right? It's like you start off, just kind of, ooh, this is an interesting object, and then finally it's like, oh, like you can actually play baseball with it. You can actually play chess with it. You can actually do mathematics with it. In the case of pencil and paper, I guess. No.
Yeah, that's probably not how that works, but
yeah. Well, I think they specifically made exemptions for if you get interested in math, it's a completely different thing.
Yeah.
You are insane. So the another thing that they kind of identified is that it really helps to have role models, either in the family or close by, to aspire to and to compete with.
Yeah. Siblings, right?
Yeah, siblings in particular, they mentioned, is really, really, really nice. If you have an older sibling that also does the activity, then you can look up and be like, I want to be like them when I grow up. And then you do, and then you totally destroy all of your competition. And for more intellectual pursuits, such as mathematics, they talked about, rather than literally being introduced to like the symbols of algebra at a young age, like that does not really. It's more like they encourage intellectual pursuits in general, right? Lots of reading, rewards for curiosity in general, science in general, that kind of stuff.
Stuff like riddles that involve math, probably.
Yeah. Just kind of general creative and critical thinking skills getting developed. So that's the first stage, kind of just starting out. Then the second stage is becoming serious, right? In which somebody goes from, yeah, this is like a thing that I do sometimes, to, yeah, this is a thing that I do, right? They start actually practicing. They start taking lessons from a coach or a teacher who is more than, hyper technically skilled, right? More enthusiastic, more encouraging, right? Somebody who's going to help them to develop their own passion for it. At this stage, the parents and the coaches form a lot of the basis for motivation. Usually the kid is like, I want to go do other things with my life. And then the parents and the coaches are like, but what if instead of that you practiced your scales? And they're like, oh, geez, well, I guess I'll do it.
Fucking relatable.
They tend to establish practice routines, right, which kind of help take some of the difficulty of finding time for practice out of it, right? They often find and explore reasons to enjoy the activity and continue kind of moving from external motivation towards internal motivation. The teachers tend to focus a lot on why, not necessarily on how, which sparks the deep curiosity that leads to a desire for mastery. And as they become more and more serious, they find new and better teachers, and they practice more and more, and it becomes a larger and larger part of their life. They start identifying with the skill. They start, and that's yeah. It's like you start self-describing as, I'm a dancer, I'm a poet, I'm a musician, I'm a baseball player, right? And that's now become a part of you. It's become a part of your identity, this skill that you have. and this kind of comes to the end of becoming serious. Third, we get commitment as a stage. There's a kind of a moment that you decide that you're going to do everything within your power to become the best that you can be, and your level of intensity and level of work increases essentially up to the point of as much as is humanly possible, right? Like, you are like eating, sleeping, breathing this activity, and every moment that you can, every moment that is reasonable to spend on it, you are spending on it.
Every breath you take. Wait, sorry.
Yeah, that exactly, precisely. And then fourth, they kind of talk about a stage where you become what they call a pathbreaker, which I think might be more commonly understood as an innovator. Right? Somebody who makes creative contributions, who has reached the edge of the field and pushes past it. And the authors report that they believe that a lot of what's going on there is pretty similar to what you do to get there, right? You know, if you want to be an innovator, master everything that already exists first, and then you'll have a really nice basis on which to start figuring out what rules to break, start figuring out what direction to push in. Because by that
What's
point, you
important.
usually have a pretty good idea of where you're supposed to be going, right? And he gives that whole ladder metaphor of, like, you know, you're building a ladder into the sky, and you build, you know, you've climbed like 600 rungs, and now you're at the top of it, and you're like, well, I mean, I just kind of screw in this bit to that bit, and there's another rung, right? And then you just kind of take that last step. And so, even though for someone who isn't a total master of the whole thing, it might look like an enormous leap that is totally insane and crazy, and how could anyone ever be so brilliant as to think of this thing? Well, you know, I mean, it's pointed to and implied by the entire rest of the field, and you just kind of find it. So, these being sort of the 4 stages of mastery over a thing. So, I took a couple of different things out of this. One being some bits on motivation, and one just being kind of a recognition of that, like, commitment is a stage. That's kind of neat, right? And being like, I'm gonna quit my job. I'm in danger.
I'm in danger.
I'm in danger. My bank account would be like, I'm in danger. I'm like, I'm doing this. I'm making it happen. So, do you guys have any thoughts kind of reading this section? How it relates?
For me, it kind of really resembled and like, the more I think about this, the more like I start to like really dig into this philosophy, and I'm like, okay, and it's like it really reflected Matt Thornton's idea of the, you know, sort of belt path, where it's like at first you're learning the thing, then you're getting pretty good at the thing, now you're really good at the thing, and now you can innovate, and it's like, you know, whatever, green, white, whatever, blue, purple, brown / black, and it's like you can kind of see that same progression happen through the belt system too.
Yeah, no, 100%. You know, you have your kind of white belt area where you're starting out, and then you kind of get your blue belt, and at blue belt, that's where you kind of start to move seriously, and then up through blue, you're generally becoming serious, and then once you kind of get your purple, that's kind of the commitment point. And a lot of things, I actually did some Googling to try to get a sense for, like, you know, how, like, is it completely unreasonable for me to have like 1 purple belt in the server? Is that insane, right? And I like Googled around, and I was like, hey, like, you know, what's the average belt distribution in your like typical BJJ gym? And like, a lot of what you get is like, yeah, there's like a shitload of white belts, and then there's a shitload of blue belts, and then there's a couple purple belts, and then there's a couple of brown belts, and if you're lucky, there's a black belt, right? And it's like, yeah, okay, that makes sense, right?
And you have to think too, right? Like that makes sense. I mean, because like, even assuming if 100% of the people stuck on the way, like with the sport,
yeah,
most people aren't always going to get there because either they're, you know, not devoted,
yeah,
they don't put enough time in, But then, like, you also have to think that people just drop out because they're bored or something too. Not
yeah.
really.
I think that,
getting the belts is not about like it not being possible for the person. It's just
yeah.
people not wanting to.
Yeah, a lot. I think what they basically said is like, roughly. I think they said like roughly 50% of white belts make it to blue. Roughly 10% of blue belts make it to purple. And once you hit purple, they said it's basically just a matter of time until you hit black. It's like.
Hell yeah, dude, and I'm getting kind of close there. Hell
Yeah, like they basically said like like if you have the dedication to take it to purple, you're usually not quitting. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
then you're pretty much you're in too deep.
yeah, you've committed, right?
The sunk cost.
Yeah, it's a cost, exactly.
God,
I've spent so many years building this. I'd be ashamed to throw it away. Yeah, it's like, okay. I mean, you're in it now, right? So. Yeah,
but even then, it's like I think most people, by the time they get the blue belt, they have a really good idea of whether or not they want to continue doing it.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. And so, if you get your blue belt, that's kind of your decision point, right? Like, are you going to continue to take it seriously, or or are you gonna just kind of chill here, right? And there's a lot of people that's the level of seriousness that they want to interact with the game in. They just want to chill seriously, And
for me personally, it was like gives me some hope because it's like if I'm getting I'd say I'm like 60-70% to purple belt, pretty far along the journey from my opinion.
Yeah, if not
and like seeing that I went from green belt to blue belt with a little bit of study, and then like going from blue to purple in however much time, it's like, and it's only about 10% of people get to that point, and then that kind of tells me that I'm a lot more capable than I thought I was. You know what I mean?
I mean, the way that I was actually thinking about it is like comparing it to like rank distributions in League, right? I was like looking and I was like, okay, like, is it insane that I think that like a purple belt is like high diamond? Is that nuts? Am I insane? Or is that like legit, right? And what I found is that the distribution that you get of like, okay, like blue belt is like platinum, right? And purple belt is like high diamond, and then like brown belt is like masters or challenger or something, and then like black belt is like even above that, right?
No.
That
black belt doesn't really exist yet.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's like
basically.
if we like take that as like a distribution, and I do want to return to the idea of like black belts don't exist. If we take that as like a distribution, then like that roughly matches what sorts of percentages you see in BJJ gyms, and so that gave me like a little bit of confidence to be like, okay, no, I'm not nuts. That actually does seem like reasonable.
And it's funny when you consider it that way, because it's like you look at the rank distribution, and then like the players just look so fucking terrible. Like they just look like they literally don't know the basic fundamentals of the game in platinum. Whereas like in real life too, that's pretty much the same thing. Like to the top like 0.1% of BJJ people in the platinum quote unquote level of BJJ probably look like shitters too. Yeah. The problem is that like we're so exposed to the high level play in League of Legends from streamers like solo queue streamers, fucking pro play, that looks like the normal play. That looks like the normal level of play to us.
Yeah.
So like I think in the League community, the skill, the idea of what skill is so fucking
inflated
off and inflated or deflated or whatever, I don't know what word they use, but like the way that people look at it is just wrong.
Yeah, because access to extremely high levels of play is so readily available. Like that's literally what you see. It's like you see that, and then you see your games, and you're just like, wow, what a difference.
and then you look at those games, you're like, oh, it's so easy.
Yeah.
And then I'm gonna go and do that, and then you just like get fucking screwed, and you're like, well, what the hell, man?
Pepe hands.
And so like,
probably my teammates, right? Yeah.
Probably it has to be. Can't be me.
And so like when you think about it that way, and it's like when you consider that in other developments of skill, like if you think about the blue system and how it relates, if it's really similar in that sort of progression, and then it's like, yeah, no, dude, you should never be ashamed that you're a purple belt. Purple belt means that you're fucking insane.
Yeah, purple belt means you're nuts. Like Matt talks about.
Means you're pretty damn good. Like blue belt means you're pretty damn good. But purple belt means you're fucking insane. Like you're actually just nuts at the game.
Yeah. I mean, like, you know, when we talk about, like, purple belts, right? Like, Matt Thornton talks about, like, purple belt is about the area where you start seeing people being able to contribute as coaches, right? Like, he talks about that's when students start helping out, like, teaching, like, white belt classes, is once they hit purple, you know? Which makes perfect sense, right? Like, if you have the fundamentals down to the point where you're a purple belt, then they're solid. Right, they're like really solid, and at that point they're probably solid enough that if you spend a little bit of time, you know, working on your delivery, then you can coach. You know,
right? And especially because it's like when you're teaching a white belt, literally all you have to do is focus on fundamentals. You don't have to do any of that. Like, well, if this were a case where this happened, then you have to do this. Or, like nobody cares about that. Like it's all about whether or not you can actually do the basic thing.
Amusingly enough, they will ask you that stuff because that's all that streamers talk about. Because most streamers are.
Yeah,
right?
true.
So,
and they may ask you about like, hey, what do I do if I'm doing this and the guy does this? And it's like, well,
you just start by hitting your CS, okay?
Yeah, just focus on moving your damn mouse, okay?
Yeah. Come back when you have 100 CS.
You doctor yet?
You doctor? You platinum? Okay, go back. CS4. But yeah.
You challenger yet? No dad on gold. You talk to me when you challenger. Slam door.
Yeah. So,
yeah, that gives me a lot more confidence in that system too. Reading that and then really kind of like being able to be like, okay, this just really reminds me of the belt system. And like the more I really think about its philosophies, the more that I'm like, this guy is just like on another level. He's just like on another plane of existence.
Matt Thornton, like, my God,
Matt Thornton is just so smart.
He is an actual genius. Like,
he's 10,000 light years ahead of everyone.
I mean, like the amount of time that he just spends sitting down and thinking about his philosophies, and to the point where he gets to the point where it's so well thought out that, you know, people with us who are like less experienced are like, I don't really know if I agree with this part of it. Then we come back and we're like, no, this is entirely right.
Yeah, right? It's like, you read his stuff.
He good. He good.
He's like, it's like reading gospel, right? Like, every single time that I go back and I read Matt Thornton's stuff, I'm just like, oh, here's like another way that relates. Oh, here's another instance in which I've been straying from this and seeing the negative effects of it. Like, every single thing that he's written, I'm just like, oh my God. Actually just insane, right? I want our next book to be his essays. Low key. I don't get me wrong. Josh Waitzkin is incredible, but like I feel like we have to, right? Like I feel like we have to do like Matt Thornton next. Like there's just so much in there.
I personally would rather do Josh Waitzkin and then Matt Thornton, only because the thing about Matt Thornton is that he had this really nice philosophy for laying out how to teach, whereas Josh Thornton lays out this really nice philosophy about the mastery path. Whatever. I get you. I don't really care about the names.
Yeah.
The point is that Josh, whatever the fuck.
Waitzkin,
yeah.
Josh Simpson.
Understood.
Josh Simpson, agreed.
Mr. Chessman, how about? Let's go with that.
The fact is that book is a really good foundation for learning how to, or like thinking about the mastery path, which I think for Gilga and I specifically is going to be slightly more useful, just because we're assistant professors, but we're both still learning, still like doing the student motions a lot more than the coaching. But like I know for you that the coaching aspect should be better, right? So like for you, Matt Thornton's reading's gonna be a lot better, and I want to get to them.
True. Nah, you right. Yeah, that's fair. And they're also probably they're more relevant to Josh Waitzkin's probably more relevant to other people as well. So.
The other thing we could do is actually do both at the same time. Read one essay in one chapter, and then cut it in half. Like you can't get as much discussion on both, but it's something to think about.
Oh my God! No way. No. I would much rather do them sequentially than do them at once. I will take Matt Thornton third rather than do them at the same time. Okay. That's nuts.
We'll talk about it.
Yeah. So to return to that point about do we have black belts yet? I think that's a really interesting question, actually. And I'm starting to think that we probably do. Like, I'm starting to see that, like, because it's really hard to tell the difference between brown and black, right?
Yes.
Like, people talk about, like, brown belt is the unofficial black belt, right? And that the gap between brown and black is basically just like,
really short.
it's really
So
short.
here's So here's the way I considered it, right? Where it's like
Yeah.
brown belt means that you're pretty much on the level of black belt. You're just not a teacher.
Mhm.
That's sort of the way I considered it. So it's like if you're a black belt, you're probably the leader of a dojo, and then
Yeah.
you know, and then where like a brown belt, you're probably like a world competitor or something like that.
Yeah, and even on top of that, it's like, as a brown belt, you are, when Matt talks about it, right? He talks about it in terms of like simplifying the concepts and principles that you've come to understand, right? Like, your game has essentially finished developing, and the only difference between brown belt and black belt is like a matter of pressure testing and a matter of conditioning.
Mental model type stuff.
Yeah, it's like, you know, I mean, like, look at like a whole bunch of challengers that exist today, right? And you talk to them about their mental models of like, how does everything work, by the way, right? And they're just like, well, in this exact position you do this, and in that exact position you do that, and then in this position you do this, and you're just like, so there's a rule there? And they're like, I don't know, you just get it by experience, right? And you're just like, okay,
Yeah, that's
like,
brown belt for me,
right?
I think.
That's brown belt, right? But then to go from that to black belt is to be able to say, in all of these positions, the underlying concept, right, is this, and this is always the thing because of this, why this, and this, and so these are the factors that, you know, it's like, exactly, right? Like, you're ready to teach, even if you don't necessarily choose to teach. Your mental models are refined to the point where they are simple and clean.
So it's almost like the ultra learning guy where he's like, it's when a professional looks at a problem, they're like, this is a conservation of energy problem. Whereas like the guy who like a brown belt would be like, well, in this case it's a lever, and this is happening, and this is happening, and it's like, and then this is why this, right? And this is how we solve it. Whereas like the pro would just be like,
It's pattern recognition at the highest level of abstraction, right? That's basically
so it's like the chunks are basically as big as they can get.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I think that's a really good distinction, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Which would mean that like there's probably very little black belts. Like, I see that like someone like LS, I could probably see as a black belt now because the thing about LS is that if you watch his recent coachings, he much more talks about the actual fundamental aspects of the game, and rather than just be like, in this situation you do this, he's actually like, well, in this situation you do this, and the reason is because you have these weight management and lane positioning rules that you have to follow, and then you know, so he's much closer to black belt, if not fully black belt now, than he would have been 2 years ago.
I will admit, I have not watched hardly any LS lately, because every time I open him up, it's like, I'm going to spend 45 minutes talking about who my top 20 players are at Worlds this year, and I'm just like,
I only watch his YouTube videos. I don't watch his streams.
True. I should check out his YouTube again, honestly, because I think I could learn some stuff. Like, on the list of people who know their stuff about like factual League of Legends.
But actually, when I come to think about it, I think that the best black belt players in League are probably the ones who work as skill capped, because they have to burn down the concepts into like lower levels, like higher level abstraction. So like,
that idea sits wrong with me.
Sure, I mean, maybe it's not the best way to do it, or maybe it's not ethical. But like, the truth of the matter is that those videos are really well. They're really good at burning down the concepts to the efficiency level, so that the student can abstract upon them. Whereas, like, I think that when I get VOD review, a lot of it is just, in this situation you have to do this, and then that's about as far as we go. There's never any burning down beyond that, and I think that's the problem that I think a lot of us, at least I have, with a lot of coaching.
The issue I have with like thinking of LS and skill capped guys as black belts is that the brown and black belt is about conditioning and high level competition, right?
Yeah.
Is it?
Well, no. I mean, if the level of skill is high enough for them to be able to take mental models and refine them to the simplest level, like, I mean, because like
You
what
can
if-
be
like,
a
what if you
coach
have,
without
like-
being a black belt.
like-
yeah. You could be a good coach without being a black belt.
Like, the thing about brown belt, right, they talk about that, is you should be scary to play against for literally anyone in the world. Right? And I think you look at LS, and I think that you look at a lot of people who work at Skill Capped, I don't think that they would look scary to play against for the top end of, like, Korean Challenger or pro players. You know what I mean? Like, they're
that seems like
close. They're close, but I don't think that they would hold up in those games.
But if you use that metric, then pretty much like Faker is the only brown belt in the world, or Caps or something, like 3 people.
I don't even think that that's necessarily true. I mean, like, if you look at like anybody who's making it to like, I don't know. I mean, if you look at anybody who's like making it to Worlds from a major region, right, the majority of the people in those teams are probably going to be brown belts, right? You may
Well,
you
then,
may
yeah,
see
but
a
if you
couple
make
of purple
the-
belts, but I think you're going to look at mostly brown belts from there.
But if you make the litmus test, you have to be scary to play against for anybody, like the top players in the world. And then you look at most of the players, and they're probably not all that scared to play against most of those players, except if they're like SKT, KT, or like G2, or
Mhm.
like anybody from those, not from those 3 teams. With that litmus test, they would all be purple belts.
And I don't think that that's necessarily wrong. Remember, the game is pretty young, right? BJJ has been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. League
Well, but
is still developing.
I just think that like
It's not
making
intended to
that
be
the
a
only
relative
litmus
measure.
test.
I mean, I guess it literally is a relative measure, right? Like, you know, there are like the best people in the world, right? And
Mhm.
of those best people in the world, you should be able to hang with them and not look like you're getting
Well,
completely outclassed.
and then that,
you
that
know?
I would be very much better with that as the definition of a brown belt than you have to be scary for the best in the world to be a brown belt.
Oh, okay.
Then there's
Okay.
the
I didn't
other-
realize that
It's
you
not
were.
about-
Yeah, I didn't realize-
scary
yeah.
it means they have to play seriously against you.
I was not clear with that. The official wording from Matt Thornton is closer to you should be able to hang. It's not scary. It's not you should be terrifying. It's not you should be like a real challenge. It's just
Okay.
you should be able to play with them and not look like an idiot.
Yeah, no,
You know what I mean?
I definitely agree with you on that. But like, yeah, it was. I don't know if it was unclear as much as me interpreting it wrong, but either way, I agree with that much more than the other way I took
Okay.
it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
my poor choice on the word scary. But yeah, so given that model, right? Like, I think you look at like a couple of years ago,
Then probably
we
like
had
them,
like probably sub 10 brown belts in the world. You know what I mean? You look at now,
yeah,
I
you
think
have,
we're
like, the
looking at
Faker,
probably
like, yeah.
closer to 20, 30, maybe even
Yeah, like
35.
maybe like the top 4 or 5 teams. in
Yeah, the
world,
top 4 or 5
I'd be
teams.
okay with that.
And they're all in, and you like look at them, right? And they're all up there. They're all like genuinely competing against each other, and it doesn't feel like there's one team that's like totally shitting on everyone, right? Like, there are
And then-
stylistic differences for sure, and there are people who win the tournaments and people who don't win the tournaments. But like, when we're going into Worlds this year, and we're like, yeah, there's like 4 teams that could win it, we wouldn't even be that surprised. Like, that tells me that we're starting to see things start to cap off, right?
And then
We're
I think on
starting to
top of
see-
that, it makes sense too, because it's like when you look at all the regions, there's like very clearly only one really good team, and the rest are kind of like there.
Yeah.
And then you go to World, and then like all the teams that were just there just all get crushed really early on, and then the
Mhm.
team like the top 4 are like the only ones that are remotely even
Yeah.
close.
Mhm.
And so it's like
Those
I'd be
guys are
okay
the
with
brown
saying
belts.
that because like yeah, those guys are the brown belts or the black belts or whatever. Then the other guys are probably very high purple belts or something.
And that would be kind of the way that I would think, right? And it's like,
Yeah.
late purple belt is like really good. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you can be
And, like,
challenger.
purple belt's still like
as a
top
late
one, like
purple
top like 50. Yeah.
I mean, heck, I think you can probably get challenger with like mid purple belt, to be completely honest. Right? Like mid to late purple belt is about where I would start expecting somebody to hit challenger.
I mean, the thing is that like it just seems like because it seems like purple belt is so detail oriented that it just like takes fucking forever.
Yes, that's the point. That's exactly how it works.
Yeah, it's literally described in Matt Thornton as the hump belt, right? You just gotta get over it, bro. Like,
yeah,
it's literally memorize everything that there is to know about every situation so that you're comfortable in it. Like, okay, Pepe Hands, like, that's kind of a lot of stuff, right? Like,
guess I'll just play forever.
Yeah, guess I'll die, right?
Oh yeah, the game's changing every 2 weeks. Okay, fine.
Yeah, game's changing every 2 weeks, and like, you know, I think that it's hard to say, right?
But it's also hard to say because it's like for those players, the game changes every week, and no matter what, they're still way the fuck up there. So it's like, is it really like all the nuance that changes
in
that's not
predictable
fundamental,
ways,
or is it like is it like they're fundamental? They're just so good that
without experiencing them.
I definitely think that like fundamentals is really what sets apart the best of the best from rest right now.
So, you know, I might think of that like blue belt's about learning them to the point where you're solid, then purple belt's about getting your fundamentals and the situational nuance to a point where it's like you're really fucking good.
Yeah, I mean, when you get awarded the purple, I mean, this is just my thing. This is not Matt, right? Like, Matt doesn't give a, you know, he basically just says, like, your fundamentals should be solid by the time you're a purple belt, right? But the way that I've kind of been doing it as a metric, right, is like, if I look at like a sample of 10 games, right, and I look at all of the errors and mistakes that are being made in those games, right, most of them, like 70 to 80% plus, should be errors of situational stuff, right? Fundamental mistakes should only be happening, you know, 10 to 20 to 30% of the time, right? And when we look at the major mistakes, they should all be mistakes of situational stuff, right? So, you know, fundamentals are mostly super solid. Sometimes they slip a little bit, but it's never like an insane monkey slip. You know what I mean? That's kind of where I'm looking in terms of purple belt, right? Because at that point, that's around when the shift as a coach has to be, okay, we're going to stop just kind of drilling fundamentals, and we're going to start covering some of this more situational stuff, because that's actually what's causing you the most trouble now. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so when that switch happens, when I look at your game and I'm like, I don't want to teach you more fundamentals, that's about when I'm starting to think about purple belt.
I think that's fair.
Yeah. But yeah, so thinking about this in terms of that's really interesting. So starting out as kind of the whole kind of white to blue, becoming serious as the blue to purple, commitment as the purple to brown, and then path breaking as brown to black. Yeah, it really actually lines up beautifully, doesn't it? That's really neat. Yes. I had not made that connection while reading it. That's really cool.
It really does, yes. It's probably the biggest thing we can take away from this chapter, to be honest.
Yeah, no kidding. That's like super sick. Yeah, the other thing that I had kind of seen here that I thought was really interesting and potentially really important for Royal as an org is the idea of that the kind of blue to purple stage is where motivation shifts from external to internal motivation. That was kind of a new idea for me. That like there was like a progression, you know, that it wasn't just like you either have one or you have the other, that it like slowly changes over time. I was like, it makes perfect sense when you think about it, but like that was not a concept that I had like encountered before. So it was like, huh.
That's and you know, really what's funny to me is that like that's how to I think for me that's kind of how I conceived of it the whole time. Never really thought about it in that like that concrete of a terminology, but like
Yeah.
for me it's like like when I see people start, it's almost like I just want to be good, or like I want to like do whatever, like I just want to like whatever. And as you get better, you start to like really enjoy the situations that you're like in the practice and stuff, I think, more. At least that was the way for me for music, whereas like first I was just like I just want to be good at piano so people like me more or whatever. And then like as I got better,
Yeah,
like
exactly.
I actually really like playing piano just for playing piano.
Yeah, and
Here's-
so
And I think that's why I had such contentions when we were talking about external versus internal motivations. And I don't think I really realized why I was having that contention, but when I consider that and the way I think about it, that was my contention. Was
I
that
have an interesting idea.
Hmm.
Maybe it's the other way around. The motivation doesn't shift when you go from blue to purple. It's to make the process of the purple belt, you have to have internal motivation, and external motivation is not enough.
yeah, I think that's
Because
also
it's,
true.
Because
so
it's a
like
phase
maybe
that
like when
really
you're a blue
sucks
belt,
when
that's
you-
when it happens.
Yeah, like if you're a blue belt and you have external motivation, then you won't move on to the purple belt stage where you
That's
refine everything.
kind
Because
of
the refining part, like it, I want to say it
No.
blows, but it doesn't. Like
But that also
I
explains
want to
why-
say it blows, but it doesn't.
sucks. Practice
when you
sucks.
consider the fact that like sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
No.
No.
I'm basically done. You're not done. Go back. Don't worry.
So when you consider the fact that they say 50% of white belts become blue belts, and then 10% out of that 50% become purple belt, that totally makes sense. That's like
Yeah.
if you get into BJJ for just like wanting to like beat someone's ass or something, then like
Yeah, or
then
just
the blue
to
belt's
have
probably
confidence
fine.
in self-defense. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're good
Right.
enough. You're gonna win street fights as a blue belt for sure.
And then like but then once you like if you end up developing to like because like not many people go into an art like that as a white belt and say I want to learn this just because I want to learn this. Most of the
Yeah.
time people
Yeah.
who do that have already have everything planned out ahead of time.
Mhm.
So it's like those are the people who are going to get to the purple, brown, and black no matter what. It doesn't matter.
Mhm.
But if you're just going in there, most of the time people aren't going in there and saying I want to just get really good at this because I enjoy it. They don't know if you enjoy it. They've never done it before.
Mhm.
So it makes sense that they would do it for something completely external, and then as they get better, they decide, I really just enjoy.
That's
I
how
really
internal
enjoy
motivation
drilling. I really enjoy
forms.
all this, and then
Yeah.
they get to purple, blue, whatever.
Additional point to that, it links to ultra learning. So it's that the people that start an activity with the internal motivation already have mastered something else.
Yeah, you right.
Yeah, entire.
Like when
And that's-
when you're like bilingual and you encounter a third language and you're like, yeah, I'm own this shit.
Yeah.
Or like the fact
I
that I
like-
basically, I'm very close to mastering piano, for example, and so I went into league, like with the actual already intent of mastering. Because I guess like for me,
Yeah.
I know how it goes, the pathway, and I want to do it because I want to be able to say that I'm good, but also because I want to be better at teaching. I want to learn how to do other esports, and so it's like for me, I came in the league knowing what I wanted with it already, and it makes sense to me when you say, "Oh, it's because you've already mastered something."
Yeah,
Mm.
it really do be like that.
Mm-hmm. That's
So
neat.
that's a really good connection I never made. Thank you.
And
Just made
given
as well.
that, and given that, right? I think it explains why I have traditionally leaned towards trying to recruit people who already have the internal motivation, right? Because if they have that, generally it means they're going to work harder, and generally it means that they are closer to like the level of like having the dedication necessary to reach purple belt, which has always kind of been like, I want to teach pretty good people to get very good, right? I don't, I have a lot less interest in teaching people who aren't very good to be pretty good, right?
Right.
And so that's just like a personal interest thing, right? More than like a, what is possible thing.
And
right.
I think
Mhm.
now that we've laid out this whole sort of framework with that, it makes a lot more sense to me now why you don't teach newbies, and then you want to make sure that they have already some. Because for me, originally, it was kind of like, for me, I don't care.
Yeah.
I'll teach somebody who's brand new. I'll teach somebody who's pretty
Sure.
good and want to get really good. I don't care, right? So it's
Mhm.
like, for me,
Yeah, it doesn't
they're
make a
two
difference.
completely different. They're two completely different classes of students to me, and
Yeah.
and so like for me, it was really confusing because like you were talking about internal motivation, external motivation, and for somebody like me, like who I guess already had the kind of understanding, not explicitly but implicitly had that understanding.
Yeah, you had an intuition about it.
So it really confused me when you're like, I don't like people who have external motivations, because for me that really didn't make a lot of sense, because like if they're a new student, it's hard for them to have internal motivation just because they haven't really had that experience. So like now I'm like, okay, now it makes a lot more sense why you say that sort of as a flag post. So
yeah,
that really enlightened me as to why and the thinking.
I wouldn't have been able to
Sidebar.
really vocalize that before, right? And before like kind of reading this and thinking about it.
Oh yeah, same here, 100%. We would have always been at odds with each other about that and been like,
people only have internal or external motivation. It's never a mix, and they never change. Just it's an inert quality of a person, how their motivation is. XD. Yeah.
And for me, it was just kind of like, now I realize for me it's less about giving students chances and more about understanding that not every student's going to develop internal motivation. And now that's the thing that I have, is now I understand what that means.
That's the big thought.
And if if my goal is always like, I want to be training people who I believe could eventually become masters, right? Like if that's kind of my thing, then yeah, I'm going to be a little bit more selective. I'm going to be
100%.
I'm going to be that second or third coach that you come to, not necessarily the first one, right?
Right. You'd
That's
be
kind
the
of where I
guy who
want to be.
teaches masters and doctorate students, not the guy who teaches undergraduate freshmen.
Yeah, precisely.
Right.
Yeah. And that said, I'm really happy to hear, by the way, that you like are into the idea of like teaching new people, because if Royal is going to work in the way that it needs to, right? If we're eventually going to get to a point where we can open this up and go public and like, have the culture remain good, but also like be teaching a wider variety of people, right? We're gonna need people who are willing to coach like white belt classes. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I'd be totally down for that.
So I'm happy to hear that that's an interesting. I think we might tap into that later.
Like I have no qualms about how far the student goes, because for me, teaching is intrinsic to like, I like teaching people. I don't care how good they get. I just want to make sure that they feel good about being with me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I dig it.
Which is really important for white belt teaching.
Oh,
yeah, definitely.
They talk about it, right? Like enthusiastic and encouraging are like the number one qualities that a coach of new people coming into the field are going to have. You have to help them develop that love for the thing and slowly develop the internal motivation if they're going to go on for mastery, or either way.
Or get them to a point where they feel good enough to even just go home and play it if they're deciding not to do it anymore. Like,
yeah,
because like the thing is like some teachers are really bad white belt teachers. They'll just like crap
totally
on you.
Terrible.
Oh yeah, white belt teaching is probably the harder one.
LS. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Although I would imagine that LS didn't know about that, or like did it for like an entertainment value, which is still just as bad. But like
either way,
either way, it's like a lot of the people who he got teaching him just didn't want to learn anyway. So
yeah,
and I'm not saying you should be mean to them, but I can kind of understand the frustration there.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I had a really good point. I can't remember.
The thing though is that like, even though I'd be totally down to teach white belt, that doesn't mean I don't want to teach higher levels. So it's like I still want to be able to teach higher levels.
For sure.
But because like the thing is like the thing that I have a fear of is like being somebody who really likes having that sort of different stuff to do. Like the one thing I don't want to have happen as a teacher is that I'm just forced teaching only beginners or only intermediate or only masters.
Newsflash: ADHD man likes varying things.
Wow, called out.
Hey man,
Oof.
I feel personally attacked right now.
Oof. Soul read.
Like the fucking
Yeah, I get you.
That's one of those soul reads that you'd expect at like $1 million poker tournament. And everyone's like big brained as fuck out, and they're like, and then Doga's just like, no, that was super easy, dude. What?
Actual child's play.
I made myself laugh. It's
Yeah.
really good.
Yeah, I cracked me up.
The thing too is that that notion that you have that like white belt teaching is harder is backed up by Matt Thornton, right? That's yet another one of the things that he talks about is like if you are a mediocre teacher, you will still be able to teach like blue belts and purple belts and brown belts because they've got enough of a mental model already of the game there.
They can just figure out on their own. Like
that if you point them sort of in the right direction, they'll bump into it themselves, right? But for somebody who doesn't even know how to crawl, right, they're fucked, right? Like if you can't introduce somebody totally new to the game, then you're not there yet, right? And so I mean, like, I'm not there yet, full stop, right? Like, there's no way that I'm ready to introduce somebody totally new to the game. And that's one of the things that I'm hoping to get a little bit better at once we continue to work on this syllabus, right? Like, that's one of the things that I think is going to give me tools that will allow me to.
But I mean, at the same time, though, like even if you know how to do it, they'll be able to smell the bullshit if you don't enjoy it.
For sure.
So like.
They'll probably just not enjoy it as much, which is.
It's not to say that I'm going to do it, but I want to be able to, for sure.
If anything, you want to be able to teach other teachers how to teach beginners, even if you don't like doing it.
Yeah.
If that's kind of like what you're saying.
Easily. It's either way.
Yeah. Actually, like, this chapter is, like, when I read it, I was like, this isn't going to be a very good session in book club. I feel like I didn't get much out of it.
Yeah.
Except for that belt sort of thing. And then we come here and we just, like, big brain the shit out of it. I love it.
Each of us kind of found our own thing in here that was pretty neat. Except Dilga. Dilga didn't contribute anything to the conversation this week.
Dilga did nothing but make fun of me for having ADHD.
Yeah, I'm just here for the memes, you know?
Gotcha.
Dilga black belt at making fun of me, by the way.
Too easy.
Black belt, yeah. I'm basically
teaching me how to make fun of Moravite seems legit. I feel teach me, Daddy. I feel instructed. So the kind of final bits of the chapter talk a little bit about age as like a component of mastery and a component of the learning process, right? And to summarize a lot of what he says, it seems like old age isn't really as much of a deterrent as once was thought, right? A lot of the time, skill degradation occurs more due to discontinued practice as a result of fear or disgust over the changes that are occurring in one's body than anything else, right? It's like, you see your physical properties start to disappear and you're like, well, I guess I'll just give up. And then you just go ahead and slack from that point forward. But he says, you look at the people who do continue to practice, they continue to be pretty damn good, right? And certainly better than tons and tons of young people, right?
You look at the horror witches of the world. The guy who's like 90, still playing piano at concerts and still mind-boggling everybody about how good he is and how
killing it, right? Like absolutely destroying it.
At 90. And then you have like a 30-year-old who's like, I'm too old to play piano.
I'm too old to play piano. Bruh. Yeah. So he says, for some things, starting young matters, and for other things it doesn't matter, right? He talked in specific about a couple of different changes that happens in musicians' brains, but we've kind of already talked a lot about that sort of stuff, so I didn't take very detailed notes on all of it. But, just as a general kind of an intuition, right? Like,
I would say that
certain things matter, certain things don't.
Like, developing absolute pitch is something you have to start really early.
Yeah.
Not like absolute pitch is very... In fact, absolute pitch, most people who have absolute pitch absolutely fucking hate it. They absolutely fucking hate it.
Yes.
It's not really that helpful. I mean, having relative pitch is a lot easier, because it's like... I know one specific set of people. They're twins. They both on the spectrum, and they have perfect pitch and they sing. So what happens is like the rest of the choir has relative pitch. So like they'll drop down a half step or something on accident, like in a whole section, and then those people just have fucking actual meltdowns because they're in A flat instead of A.
Yeah. No, I could easily see that.
A flat or A because everybody else is in tune.
Yeah, nobody else cares. But yeah.
Right. So like when it comes to shit like that, like, or you're like transposing something, you're like, I'm playing an A, but everybody else in the A flat. Like it's mentally draining because then you have to consciously sing down. But in situations like that where it's like really absolute pitch just kind of sucks. It just really sucks.
Suffering from success.png.
But like, other than that, like, seems to me that most things like that are okay. I think as long as you properly practice and really proceduralize everything properly, I think most people could probably still get to the point where they're probably like high blue belt without much of an issue. I think once you get past like blue belt, it gets a lot harder to just like get that good. And maybe it can go higher. Maybe it can't go that high, but it's like that's like my intuition.
I think a lot of what you're going to find is that like the thing that's going to get really tough, right, is conditioning, right? Going from, I think what you're going to really see is it's like obtaining a brown belt, right, is not only a matter of maybe learning everything, but it's also like brown belt involves a certain level of conditioning, right?
I still don't understand what you mean by conditioning.
Physical, like being able to fucking like being in a physically
swole.
Like, mentally being swole as fuck.
Well, that makes sense for like weightlifting or something, I guess. But like,
yeah, it's like when he talks about like
conditioning in like music or something where you traditionally find muscles.
Well, it would
the ability to play for extended periods of time, or to like translate or make complex operations really quickly for extended periods of time.
Yeah,
it's like playing, being able to scream League for 10 hours, or like extended periods of time. Really.
It's like technical ability, right? In the sense that you had kind of described it to me, right? Where it's like how fast can you play your scales? How well can you finger your shit? Like that kind of stuff is like obviously like it's important, but it's not really.
So
it's not really.
Think about it.
Yeah, it's
now
like
I really think about it. Conditioning is the number one factor of being a really good musician. Because the thing is like, you literally cannot play music without the proper conditioning. Like if you cannot physically do a scale at 120 BPM, then you can never play a piece that has a scale at 120 BPM.
Yeah, you literally can't do it, right? And so like when you look at professional wrestlers and stuff like that, and professional BJJ people, you need to have a certain amount of muscle mass. You need to have a certain amount of body weight. And, like, if you don't go to the gym and fucking lift, then you're never going to know whether your BJJ stands up to the people in competition to the people that have that same level of conditioning.
Like, when you're talking about conditioning, I always think of, like, really big muscle group, like, you're fucking swole as hell. But, like, conditioning also means that, like, your ability to control your fine muscle groups
that too.
In a coordinated way takes a lot
it's
of
all
practice.
of it. It's all of it. It's physical ability, right? And control over one's body, right? And the like that kind of stuff, it isn't exactly like it isn't exactly BJJ to like explosively just like bench press somebody off of you. You know what I mean? Like that, they talk at length about how like, okay, like you could do that, but like then I'll just go okay, man, you could do that. I'll go put you in that same position another 20 times, and then let's see where you are, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you need to have efficient BJJ if you're actually going to win at the top levels. But if you're going to really win at the top levels, you need both, right? You need to not only be as technically proficient as the other guy, but you also need to have a certain level of physical strength, right? and or agility or flexibility or whatever, right? All of those things, all of those physical
But then at the same
attributes,
time too, like
those all kind of come into
there's
conditioning.
the case for like if you're so good that you're never put into positions where your weaker stature or whatever, like your weaker physicality is at stake, or it's like if you're able to win without needing it, then you don't need to work on it as hard, right? But like if you're in a situation where the other guy is able to put you in those situations consistently, then you have to be able to do them, right? So it's like
exactly.
So it's like the physicality is maybe not in that case is not as important, but it's like almost as important.
On equal technical skill, the physical skill will make the difference.
Exactly.
And the idea is that both people are as technically skilled as is possible to be. You know what I mean? Like that's what it means to be a brown belt.
Then conditioning would definitely play a big part.
And then conditioning is the last step to that you're now as good as you can be, right? Like you literally physically cannot train to be better than you already are.
Right. That's a pretty interesting divergence from playing music on an instrument, because really you could have all the theory knowledge. You don't even need theory knowledge to play piano. All you need is the physical conditioning.
Sure.
Like as long as someone tells you where and what button to press at what time, doesn't matter. Yeah. The knowledge theory helps you bring out the musicality and interpret, but no amount of music knowledge makes up for the lack of ability to play.
To literally fucking press the keys, right?
Right.
And so that is what it is to be conditioned, right? Is to physically have the capability of performing at the highest level, right?
Now,
and in League that translates to mechanical stuff, right? It's like, can you actually dodge the Malphite ultimate, right? Like, can you actually CS? Can you actually click on the guy, right? And can you kite properly? Like, all of these things are mechanical tests, and anything that people generally label as mechanics, I think is the equivalent of conditioning in League of Legends.
But then how important would conditioning be in League as opposed to, say, BJJ or a music instrumental field?
It's the same. It's the same relationship. It's the same relationship between mechanics and macro as it is between physical strength and technical BJJ, right? If you are lacking in either one of them, then you're gonna suck, right? If you have, if in League, you can you can beat any of the top players, but only at a speed of quarter real time, right? Then you're gonna suffer, right? Like your performance isn't there yet, right? You need to improve your ability to execute quickly and precisely in order to actually enact what you know, right? And it comes back to that difference of knowing versus doing, right? Like conditioning is doing,
right. Technical
skill is knowing.
Right. And I agree with you on all that, but I'm wondering, because you had mentioned at one point about like relentlessly made fun of Xmithie for like a week straight.
Yes, and I will continue. I literally have been thinking about it this whole time, and I'm like, God, his mechanics are so bad. Like, yeah.
But like, how do you take that and then reconcile it with what you just said?
And ALCS.
I mean, yeah. Like the way that I do it is by saying that I don't think that Xmithie is a brown belt. He's a high purple.
Yeah, but he has like a really, really good tactical knowledge and like map awareness.
He has good tactical.
So
he has good tactical knowledge. He has good map awareness. If you put Xmithie against, if you put Xmithie against Jankos, Tarzan, any of the other junglers, right? And you ask him to play, okay, let me just put it this way, okay? Xmithie playing Lee Sin. If that sentence doesn't make you giggle, right? Then you know what I mean, right? Like it's just not going to happen, right? Like it's not to say that he's a bad jungler. Far from it, right? High Purple is fucking pro play right now, right? Like that's where we are as a community right now. And is Xmithie in the top 100 players in the world? Probably. You know what I mean? Like I'm not saying that he's bad. I'm saying that relative to what is optimal relative to what is physically possible, his mechanics are a lot lower than what you see in other pros and a lot lower than what is possible, right? And so when I'm watching him, I'm not seeing the mechanical stuff that I would like to be able to emulate, right? And so that's why I like make fun of it. It's because it's.
So
I'm
not saying that you shouldn't make fun
Sure.
of him. What I was saying was that like, if is it the case that you have to be good at both mechanics and gameplay knowledge to be quote unquote good or the best, then are you making the implication that either NA's level of play is just too low, or is that the best just isn't that much higher than that? Like, to be the best right now, you don't have to be good at both.
To be the best right now, yeah, I agree with that. To be the best right now, you don't have to be good at both.
Yeah,
I would
Okay.
say.
and there's also the idea that in a team, you don't necessarily have to have everyone on the same mechanical standards. Being an awesome leader is
Yeah, I guess it doesn't matter how bad
As
how bad
a
Xmithie is because he has
jungler?
Jensen and double lift.
Yeah, and as a jungler too, you don't need as much. Like, mechanical proficiency doesn't make as big of a difference in your success.
communications,
as-
awareness, and planning.
Yeah, communications, awareness, planning, mental resilience, all of these sorts of things, right? Like,
Mental
one of the
resilience.
things that you will never see is Xmithie tilting, right? I've never seen it. And that, I think, makes him an incredibly valuable player, right?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
that alone, is enough to make him a world-class jungler, honestly. Like, low-key, right? Like,
Yeah,
that
being
alone
a
is worth it,
tilted
yeah.
jungler,
Yeah, like
Well,
actually
that's
not
not true,
tilting
though,
as a
'cause, like-
jungler? Yeah. No, it's
Like,
not. It's
for-
not
like-
literally
like
true.
For
But
me,
you
as
get
a
what I'm
flat
saying.
level jungler, like if I never tilt, I'm still gonna get fucking destroyed, right? Like,
Yes. No, it's a figure of speech, and by that I mean it's patent.
you know what?
false.
You know what? Go no. Figures of speech is unallowed here.
Yeah.
That's
So
illegal.
he's
No, I see what you're saying, though.
yeah he's
It's
really
not that
good.
you're saying that Xmithie is bad. It's that
No.
you're saying that the level of play isn't such that you have to be. Like, It's not like BJJ where it's like if you want to be a brown belt, there's so many brown belts you have to be on their level already. Whereas
Yes.
like League, it's still developing. It's almost like
Yeah.
it's almost
If you
like
take the top 500 players in the world right now, they're not all brown belts. They're like
Right.
I say, there's like 35 brown belts, and the rest are like high purples, right? And so high purple is fine. High purple is the top level of competition right now, for the most part, right? Brown belts are the exception, not the rule, right? Brown belts are those people that you go out and you look at them and you're like, oh shit, that's kind of fucking scary. Like when you watch
like the
Perks
Uzis and stuff?
and Perks and Chovy and Tarzan and fucking all the other people that LS like praises. You know what I mean? Like that's typically what he's looking at. Like,
Caps?
he's caps, right? Like he's looking at like what's the difference between the best of the best and the best, right? And like the best of the best, those are the brown belts, right? Everybody else, they're
Fucking
high
Caps
purples.
is so ridiculous.
Caps is nuts. Caps is. I'm excited for
sometimes
Worlds.
sometimes he brings claps in, but the amount of time
Sure.
he's clapped is so much lower than he's. The amount of time he's clapped is so much lower than he has claps that it's like.
Yeah.
I do not agree with that.
Really? I think
Especially
so.
recently, he's become so consistent.
Is that because he is? See, here's the thing. I think that's like I think that GT is so much fucking better than the other teams that they literally don't have to try to win. So they just do really stupid shit.
I
It really
mean-
just doesn't even fucking matter.
I
I
mean,
think
but
that-
those finals though, versus Fnatic, like that went to 5 games, didn't it?
Yeah.
I think Fnatic is pretty good too.
I
I
felt
think
like
Fnatic
Fnatic
is
is pretty good, and I felt like G2 disrespected them.
Hmm.
I don't know if it was like that. I don't know if that it was Caps was just being fucking bad, or if it was that they're not a very respectful team. They're really arrogant people.
For sure.
Like you go to like look at Wonder and and then the Gankos, and they're picking shit like Twitch mid and fucking Annie top, and they're like, and it's like really. Fucking
I
bringing like
mean-
Janna Karma bot lane is like
I mean, they can. Like, I don't know.
They're so
I
much better
think
that they
that-
can disrespect draft like that and still win. I think that they think that they're so much better than everybody else that they don't care.
I haven't watched the games, and so I can't necessarily say, and I have to qualify everything that I'm about to say, but I think that they may have actually just understood the fundamentals of the game and how towers are taken, at a deeper level than most other teams in ways that allow them to break the rules of traditional drafting. Right? It's like if they still create a composition that when you pool all of the champions together, they have the right mix of damage and mobility and crowd control and all of that other stuff, that it still comes out to roughly the ratios that you need, then
Sure.
they're gonna be okay. Even if it on paper it looks fucking strange, right? It's like, as an example, right? Like, you know, if you were to run like Kindred jungle, then you might be able to get away with not running an AD carry because now you have a Kindred jungle. You know what I mean? Or like if you're getting
Right.
sustained physical damage from some other source, like you have like a fucking, I don't know, you get what I'm saying, like a Caitlyn mid or some
Yeah,
shit,
I
right?
do
Like
get
you
that.
can do all sorts of different stuff like that. And
I just
you know,
didn't
and-
get that vibe
yeah.
from G2 though. I got more of a like, you guys suck and we're better than you type of
it
vibe.
may
But
be that way. Like I said, I didn't watch the game, so I can't.
I could be wrong, but that's just how it came to me. And the
It's
thing
certainly
is, like,
possible. I wouldn't be surprised.
They're backing it up. They're backing it up.
Yeah.
So far.
Something
But I
fun
think that
gameplay.
if they were tryharding, like I think that they tryharded the game 5 against Fnatic and they just like rolled them over.
On the last best of 5 they played, they did not roll them over in game 5.
And really? I thought they did. Wasn't there a game that they rolled them over then?
It was pretty close in Game 5, as
It
I
was.
recall.
Was it? Oh wow. Okay.
Fnatic were pretty close to turning it around. Yeah.
I thought that they rolled over that game.
G2 composition was running out of steam really hard.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
It
Like,
was
weren't
like-
they really far ahead early?
Yeah, it was like 20
then,
minutes
like,
in, it
couldn't-
looked relatively even, and then I thought G2 like pulled ahead right at the end.
The way, because what I remember was they got pretty far ahead, and then like the only thing Fnatic had for it was that they could kind of team fight. But like,
Yeah,
there's
but
pretty much no way they could ever win that
did
game.
win some team fights cleanly, and that's the thing. They were behind, and Fnatic won team fights. Big
Right.
time.
But I don't know. Like, this is the way I remember the game. I really didn't ever feel like only thing Fnatic could do is win fights. Like, they had no wave control or anything. Like, even if they were winning fights, there's not much they could have done with it, except for maybe grab a Baron.
Yeah, but the thing was that Fnatic only had to win fights for a while, and then Ornn was buffing everyone's items, and suddenly G2's team did not have an ADC. They had Syndra on perks on Syndra, which meant that any
Right.
massive tank would be an insurmountable issue for them.
Right.
They had
And so,
they
like,
were playing against
The
Ornn.
reason, okay, so the reason I felt like they were rolled over was because I had a misunderstanding of the way the draft worked. But the fact of the matter is that like I felt like Fnatic had no way to win other than just like constantly winning fights. But like there came a point where like, and it may just have been Fnatic throwing, but they lost like they started losing every fight. I think, except like at the very end, and it may have been Fnatic not playing the fights well, but. I just kind of felt like that game was kind of one-sided.
In almost
Like I said, like,
all
I
of
don't-
the games that or in almost all of the games and all of the snippets that I ended up seeing of that series, it seemed like it basically came down to execution. It came down to like how
Yeah.
they actually played the fights.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so
Okay.
Oh,
I
well,
can definitely see that.
the bot lane was huge bot lane difference, like massive. But besides that, yeah, Fnatic really. No, Hylissang got fucking clapped, really.
Mhm.
Yeah, he did.
But the Fnatic team was hanging out. They were not getting beaten over. They were fighting back. That was a
Yeah.
really good series to watch.
I think that, you know, either one of them could have taken the series, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think that G2 wins it more often than Fnatic wins it, but you know, it's
I
like
think that,
it's like a 60-40 kind of thing, if even that, right? It's not like a fucking 80-20 or anything, you know? It's
I
certainly
think that
not a
Fnatic's
90-10.
the only team that can try, though. Are
Yeah.
In Europe,
I would
right
agree.
now,
In Europe, yeah, no, it's like it's Fnatic, it's G2, and then everybody else is purple belts. Like,
they? Yeah.
and even I would say even only some of the players on Fnatic and G2 are brown belts, right? Not all of them, just some of them.
Weibo would I don't know. I would say Weibo is not purple or is not brown belt. Nemesis is really fucking good. Everybody on G2 would be brown belt.
Are you
It's
saying
like-
if there's some pro players that would be blue belts?
Definitely not.
Kappa.
Oh, that's what I thought I heard. You were like,
Mm.
some of them are not even purple belts.
Oh
No,
no,
sorry, no. Then I just
not
can't
brown
speak.
belts. My bad.
Yeah,
No, that's what I mean. I could have been wrong. That's what I heard.
Mm.
That's all.
I can confidently say that there are no blue belts today that are pro players. That is not a thing.
That's some bullshit, dude.
But yeah, the issue is that purple belt is such a massive fucking thing. It's like, yeah, he's purple belt, and a pro player is purple belt, and we're like, yeah, not the same guys.
Yeah. And remember too that, like, you know, people talk about like the difference between a fresh purple belt and a really late purple belt is enormous, right? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Fresh purple belt, probably like, you know, high diamond, right? Late purple belt, literally pro player, right? So, like, you know, there's a pretty fucking big gap there, right? Like, you know, but
I mean, honestly, like, just from like what I'm seeing, like, do you think there's an argument for like mid diamond being purple belt? Because, like, I mean, when you think about it, like, once you get out of diamond 4,
it's
like,
mid to high. It's mid to high.
It's like, because like diamond 4 is like 3%, like 75% of diamond is all in like diamond 4, so it's like
D20 LP probably getting to be close to purple belt,
if not one tricking.
If playing reasonably, and not funneling.
I guess suppose getting to purple belt as a one trick is actually super difficult, if not impossible.
Yeah, that doesn't work. Your one trick gets bad, and then suddenly you don't play the game.
So to return to the text after that rather lengthy and fantastic.
Yeah, you're reading a book, right?
Right. Yes, there's a book. So we started talking about old age and how it is or is not a deterrent, and how skill degradation more often occurs to people just deciding that they can't win anymore and stopping to practice. Instead of anything else. We talked about how starting young matters for some things and doesn't for others, and I think that got us into piano, into all sorts of different things. So we started talking about stuff, right? But the very final point of the chapter, in my opinion, is that as we get older, it's kind of what Morbite was saying like last week, right? Like, or not last week, but you know, the last time that we did a chapter, right? It's like, it's not that as we get older, we lose the ability to learn how to do the thing at all. It's that you learn to do the same stuff, but you learn to do it in a different way. You accomplish it through a different method, right? You know, like maybe a younger player learns to do damage and movement foresight strictly off of intuition by looking at how much damage they're doing to minions and all that kind of different stuff. Or maybe an older player would have an easier time kind of learning it by the numbers, right? And maybe that's actually like legitimate, right? Like, just as an example, I'm not saying that necessarily that in particular is you know a thing, but just in a general sense, as we get older, the way that we accomplish similar goals will be different, and it's not that we can't learn, it's that we have to learn in a different way, right? Which comes back to that same thing that we've been saying for weeks and weeks, that is just such a wonderful part of this book, which is, if it's not working, don't try harder, try differently, right? I think that is probably the maybe the second or third most important thing I'm taking out of this book, is that, which is pretty cool.
I'm sorry, I missed something.
If something isn't working, don't try harder, try differently.
That's essentially like
taking out of ultra learning as well.
Yeah, ultra learning makes the same point, where it's like, and even in one of the infographics, where it's like, if you don't get it within 3 90-minute sessions, you need to either define a sub skill better or just like change the method, because something's not working. It should not be taking you 4+ hours of diligent practice to learn nothing.
Yeah, exactly. That's I think the biggest part of this book yet. It's actually that ultra learning is about trying out many different possibilities.
I dig it.
I dig it as well.
So
honestly, this book is really good. You should read it too, Sam, if you haven't already.
I will.
It talks about
honestly,
Ericsson and as well. Like,
I thought it was kind of bullshit the first chapter or two, and then like once I got into like the actual principle, it was like actually really fucking good.
Yeah, I agree.
It really opened my eyes into terms of like what I was doing wrong with the learning process.
I'll add it to the list.
It's also a pretty easy read. Like,
yeah, it's super. It's not too filled with anecdotes. It's actually really practical.
I like it.
It's backed by science.
It's backed by science, and
Trademark.
You know I'm there for that science stuff.
And the other thing too, that it's backed by his own anecdotal evidence. So it's not like how a lot of people will write about something and it's like, this is backed by science, so this is how you do it.
Yeah.
But then they don't do it themselves. But no, this guy actually learned 4 languages over a year.
Nice.
Pretty almost near fluency. He wrote that book out of a Ultra Learning project. He completed a degree's worth of MIT classes over a course of a year. So he knows what he's doing.
Damn. Pretty sick.
It's 4 years of studies in 1 year, and he passed.
Wow.
He didn't pass with flying colors, of course, but he got 65-70% on the finals. So, but actually, that made him a lot more valuable to companies than just having a degree. Strangely enough.
Yeah, I can believe it.
Well, that's the thing, is that I'm starting it now with League and really kind of clarifying what are the things I need to learn, what are the things I need to memorize, and what are the things I need to understand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I've been kind of talking about that with Aetherton, so kind of clarifying in my brain what are the things, so. And I'm getting ready to start just going super ham and seeing if how high I can get just from doing this.
Mm-hmm. And I think too, I'm really happy that there's a book that's kind of making some kind of an argument in that direction, because maybe that'll finally allow me some material to sling at Cyclone in the discussion of that decision-making exercise is a different thing than a drill. Anyway.
There's a chapter about drills, by the way.
I want it. Yep. I want this book. So,
and wait, does he not think they're different things?
Yeah, no, he thinks they're the same. He doesn't see any difference between them. It's very interesting.
I see.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel. Oh.
Well,
got him.
You're entitled to your own wrong opinion, Cyclone. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
100%. No, but
anyway.
Yeah, and I think the most important part of it is that it really lays out a framework and a roadmap for what it means to learn something from being a beginner to pretty goddamn good.
Mm-hmm.
So having that roadwork makes it a lot more.
Many roadmaps, actually.
Right.
Even. Cooler.
And I never really had those roadmaps. So for me, I've always wanted to do something like that, where I just really immerse myself in something, but I just never knew how to do it. So having that book was really nice. Also, the fact that it came out 2 or 3 months ago too is kind of crazy. So it's super new.
Mm-hmm.
I was randomly looking on Amazon. I was oh wait, this is new.
Hmm?
And I was Moribite talked about it. I'm gonna check it out see if I can buy it for my Kindle. And well,
sure.
There we go.
Yeah, no, I actually wasn't even gonna say anything at first because I was and then I realized how good the damn book was, and I was no, I gotta share it now.
You gotta.
Because what I was gonna do originally. Yeah, what I was gonna do originally was just be I'm just gonna do this, and then when people see me get the masters or whatever in 3 months, so then I'm gonna be nah, I'm just good, dude. I wasn't gonna do that. I would have said something. I didn't say something in the first few days because I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't shitty information first.
Mm-hmm.
Understandable.
Imagine if I shared that book and it ended up being just a load of bullshit or something.
That would have been awkward.
This book is so good, and then it's nope, it's actually really shitty. Sam, I need that list of fundamentals that we came up with. I can't fucking find it.
It is pinned in the learning channel.
It's pinned? Okay.
Anyway, it seems like we're basically to the end of this particular chapter, so I think it's time to talk about our biggest takeaways.
I'm going to be completely honest. I think we all had the biggest takeaway together.
Damn.
He's right.
Agreed.
We kind of already hashed it out. We spent 20 minutes talking about it, so I'm pretty sure we all had the same takeaway.
All right, well, guess what? I'm hitting the end stream button. Thanks, guys. See you later.